Welcome to this very, very special edition of GAMCAST. Our guest today is one of the most accomplished and one of the most well-known alumni of REC Trichy or NIT Trichy. We have today Mr. Palanivel Thyagarajan from the 1987 batch of REC Trichy Chemical Engineering. After schooling in Madurai and Lovedale, he came to NIT Trichy to do chemical engineering. He was an MLA in 2016, got elected again in 2021, became finance minister and now Minister for Information Technology and Digital Services. So what a fascinating journey, PTR.
Thank you.
Very few NITTians or many engineering graduates across the country have gone through, and we are here to explore the journey and learn from you and inspire from you. Not myself, the entire alumni community and the world at large is what I would imagine. Given the fascinating journey, I thought I'll take a step back and go back to your childhood and school days. What kind of a kid were you, PTR? The shy, introverted person or the outgoing academic expert? What were you?
Well, first I should say thank you for inviting me, putting me on this program. Yeah. I would say as a kid, I was fairly egregiously gregarious. I was relatively good at school, but that was not from discipline or hard work. I had some decent talent to navigate, at least in the early years of school.
And obviously you did very well in school to get into REC also.
Yeah, well enough to get in. I think got in on merit back in the day without any reservation. We were all in the open category.
And why chemical engineering?
Yeah, I think I must say that, again, since I was a reluctant engineering student, I had no particular major in mind. And my Periyappa, my father's elder brother, Vijay's dad, and he was running an engineering company. So he called us aside and he told his son, you go study computer science, you're kind of introverted, focused, disciplined guy. And he told me, you are fit to be a kind of industry owner, broader spectrum guy. You go and study chemical engineering. That's where the future is. There's all these, new materials to be developed and new factories to be put up and all that. So you study chemical engineering. I said, okay, if you say so, I'll go. And my father was quite close because of my family had been, not only in public life, but instrumental in setting up the Madurai University and in other ways. We had quite good connections. And so my father had spoken to somebody, I think former
Professor Manisundaram.
And so Mr. Manisundaram and Professor Manisundaram had spoken to the principal. So the principal was ready to receive us and he said, what do you want as your major? So my cousin said, I want computer science. And he said, no, it's so hard to get computer science. Everybody wants computer science. This putting pressure on me, this, that. Okay, fine, you're done. He turned to me and said, what do you want? I said, I want chemical engineering. He got up from behind the desk, came, shook my hand and said, oh, that's wonderful. You're done, go. I later discovered that of the 20-odd people in chemical engineering, I was the only guy who asked for and got chemical engineering. All the rest are
I can empathize. I did chemical engineering and it was by default and not by choice.
Right. So that's how I ended up in REC and that's how I ended up in chemical engineering.
So what did you learn in class and outside class? In brief,
Even though I went to chemical engineering on advice, I found it fascinating because it was such a broad spectrum subject, right? You had to study the basics of everything. It was more an applied field rather than core fields like electrical or
That's right. That's very true.
Or mechanical. I think in that sense, it gave me a really good founding or grounding in the engineering field.
Yeah.
Outside, I really, learned to get along with people of different cultures, different backgrounds, which as I say, I had not known before. I was in a very sheltered kind of...
A melting pot NIT was,
Yeah. And, to be honest, most of the people I studied with were really affluent till I came to
Correct.
REC,
very true.
Right? So for me, it
was... saw the entire spectrum.
Yeah. So it was a brilliant time for me. Again,
I think the cross-cultural experience was really...
cross-cultural in every way, not just state to state, not just language, economic circumstances.
Social,
every way. For the first time in my life, when I actually graduated, I contemplated taking a job. In that sense, I had changed enough by that 4 years that for the first time I actually applied for jobs and I got
Your mind did transformed in some
I
ways.
said, being a professional and being good at something by yourself is actually a high value to society. And so I got jobs at 2 or 3 companies. I had decent grades.
Yeah.
So I got.
So you went for campus interviews?
Yeah. I did a whole bunch of campus interviews. I got jobs at. I got 3 job offers. I don't remember. And I think the princely sum in those days, starting salary was some 4,000 rupees or something. Like 4,000 rupees.
So your GET technical, you would have got graduate engineering training technical or management training technical.
Something to that effect.
Oh, lovely.
Anyway, I never joined, so that was the end of that.
One question. Professor Anantaraman told me that you're one of 2 people who took an elective called systems engineering. And that really didn't fit into the chemical kind of
Yeah.
groove. Any reason for that, and where did it lead you from there?
No, I think what has helped me a lot in my life is that I'm eternally curious, right?
Okay.
And the more I get exposed, the more I realize what I don't know, and therefore the more I want to learn new things. And I think now we are seeing the notion of systems dynamics or system design is really important to a lot of different ways that things fit
This
together.
was the year 87,
this
no?
This is 85 or something.
35 years, 37 years,
85,
yeah.
So I think I was just curious to see, as I say, the great joy of chemical was that it was applied and spread discipline anyway. And so when I saw something like that, I thought, to make it all work, however specialized you are, this kind of, much later, I would say 30 years later, something when I was at Lehman Brothers, one of our senior executives told us, much of the money we make is made in the white spaces of the org chart.
Oh, that's right.
It's where nobody
Fascinating
else
way of
is
looking
there,
at it.
right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So in that sense, I think I was already thinking like that and say, what does it
But
take?
it's pretty intuitive of you to think like that, wasn't it? It was a curiosity, is what you're saying.
It's just curiosity. I don't think
Because
I had
systems
never
those
had a
days
job.
was a staff function, not even a mainline function.
Yeah, I had never had a job in my life. I had never really contemplated. So I think it was more curiosity. It definitely drove my choice for graduate school, though. Because
That's what I want to go segue onto that.
Because when my father insisted, again, when I finished, I said, okay, now I've done what you want me to do. I'll go back and take over the estates and clean them up and sort them out. And he said, no, you have to go overseas. So I said, why should I go overseas? No, you have to expand your mind. You're too parochial in your thinking, I said, listen, I only spent 2 years at home.
Fascinating for your father to say that.
Then that time, right?
In those times. No.
So
it would be tempting for you to come back.
Why should I go? I'll fix all the assets. Then if we get back to the level of economic kind of stature that we used to be, I can afford to go spend 3 months a year living overseas every year.
Yeah.
Let me fix the platform, then I'll go. He said, no. The platform won't erode while you're away. But you have to go now. While your mind is still in its formative years, you have to see other ways of life.
Fantastic.
If you go later in life,
he had that vision.
He was 10 times the man I'll ever be. Now the problem is, I had no desire to go, number one. There was no email or internet or anything, number two. So number three, the only way I would decide where to apply is the people in my circle. We used to play cards every night, sometimes bridge, sometimes 3 cards, whatever it is. We used to, have a different lifestyle. We were all good enough to get good grades. There were no dumb people in REC, let's say. But I had no desire. So I was clear about 2 things. I was clear, I don't want to do a second degree in chemical engineering. Because
I remember chemical used to go to Clarkson, Toledo, Drexel, typical
Yeah, but a lot of it was so counterintuitive to me. Things don't scale up. Different people's brain works in different ways.
Correct.
And I met a very famous venture capitalist, a guy called Robert Smith, who started his career at Goodyear. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about the fascinating thing about chemical processes, which is that they don't just scale linearly. If you can do this for 5 pounds, you can't do it for 500 pounds. You have to do something different because the way materials interact is affected by so many
At scale, it becomes a little different.
At every scale is different, right?
Yeah,
because
right.
So many different variables. So I found that a bit tedious, actually, to keep saying that despite all the theory, you'll still have to do trial and error and this and that. So I said, Father, I was a bit, precocious. I said, I want to take a subject where brain power is enough. You don't need to work that hard to
understand the concepts basically,
right? So,
and work it on that.
Yeah, where high IQ can make up for it, and you don't need to be doing like 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I wanted something more intuitive to me. Of course, intuitive is
So
different for
systems
different
engineering
people.
elective influenced you a bit.
So I said, then operations research, basically applied math and a lot of number programming, numerical programming was very intuitive to me, stochastic process, things like that.
You had done some of that in college?
Yeah, I did some introductory courses, I don't remember, but not a lot. But when I went to the US, it was a steep learning curve. So I switched majors. So I knew I was not going to do chemical engineering. I was going to do operations research,
you went
something
to
like it.
Sunny Buffalo.
Yeah, but also I didn't know where to apply. So I'm saying I applied in like 8 or 10 schools. And because I didn't know how the game was played, they said, can you afford to pay? I said, yes, I can afford to pay. I come from a relatively affluent family. So I didn't get aid anyway. I'd applied for it, but I said I can afford to pay. Of course, they're not going to give me aid. And somebody later explained it to me that it was the lack of information It was that you didn't know ahead of time which school would get you into which school. The pipelines were not already established.
Correct.
And there wasn't information efficiency to know that if you come out of the top schools, you can go to the top schools. If you come out of second tier, this and all.
Except
Now,
some of the seniors going somewhere, the only information you have.
that's the only information. There's no email, there's no internet, there's no, you have to go sit in the library at the
Correct, USIS.
IS, and there's a, Barron's
Correct.
book or something you have to read.
Barron's, yeah.
And then it tells
University
you some
guide,
ranking.
Barron's University guide, yeah.
It's almost unbelievable how archaic it was.
Yeah, it was. Lack
But
of
I
information.
must say that I was so naive that I had never even contemplated a country like the United States. And so I did not know that whether I got admission. I got admission almost everywhere I applied. Now it's hard for me to remember. The thing is, I did not know that the weather in Buffalo, New York was different than the weather in Los Angeles. I didn't even know that. I was completely clueless.
Freezing cold of Buffalo you went to.
The snow, 100 inches of snow a year, I didn't even know that. I ended up picking the school because I I heard from somebody that a senior of mine from Lovedale, who was an IIT Kharagpur topper, I wrote him like an airmail letter.
Correct. Take 10 days to reach and 10 days to come back.
3 rupees or something, the blue
Aerogram,
cover,
international,
Aerogram. And he said, you must come here, Thiaga. It's a lot of fun. The courses are not that hard. As long as there's not too many Indians and Chinese in the class, they do something called grading on the curve.
Correct.
You can do okay.
Relative grading.
And
We'll max the course.
Purely based on that one thing, I chose to go to Buffalo.
Where did the shift from operation, engineering psychology happen? And PhD there suddenly out of the blue.
Like going to the US changed my life in ways, my father was right. It changed my life in ways I never even contemplated. Like the first thing that occurred to me, like all my life, even at Lawrence, I had been somebody. Like somebody knew who my father was, who my grandfather was. When I went to the US, I was nobody.
You like the anonymity of the place.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed being nobody. The first thing I realized was being nobody had 10 times more upside than whatever downside. One.
In what way did you say?
No, meaning like nobody had any expectation.
No pressure on you.
No pressure, no nothing. Wherever you go, you don't care who's looking at you. They don't know who you
Correct.
are. You're a job lawyer, nobody. I found that the way of learning and the way of thinking really suited me. Right? It was about intuition.
Cognitive.
It was about applying your mind. It was about
not memorizing
thinking.
and
It was about actual process of discovery. That's why I love to learn.
that led you to engineering psychology?
Yeah, and then I'd say the last thing is that socially I found it a really interesting place.
Yeah.
For those reasons, I thought this is a great place to live. And what happened when I went to operations research, one of the reasons I went was I said, I understand all these things about engineering and how to do this process, this process, this process. What operations research teaches me or gives me a perspective is how to make it all fit and how to optimize how you do things.
Correct.
And then I went there, and it was really the nascent era of ergonomics and human-computer interaction and applied psychology and biomechanics and things like that. They were starting to, the field really
beginning to
almost inception during the Second World War. So think about it, it's now 30, 40 years. The field has been around, at least on the physical side, a lot of repetitive motion injuries. So they're talking about carpal tunnel syndrome, design of better office equipment, design of better office working spaces, computers, more intuitive interfaces. Better industrial settings so people don't get hurt. So this was the era of the shift towards the human element of the system. The system is of the engineering and the science and the design and the microprocessors that become so good that the humans were now the limiting factor, not the machines.
Correct.
And so that led me to this thinking that, I know the engineering part, I know kind of the optimization part, but if I go out to a factory, which I had the great luxury of going as a consultant, now the limiting factor is not how good the machine is or not, it's how good the workers are. And so this is another aspect of life that I should really look at. And so I shifted my major again.
They had a PhD for that, or you picked the topic yourself?
Yeah, they had. In the industrial engineering department, they had 3 majors. One was operations research, one was manufacturing, manufacturing engineering or something, which is more like production, what you would call production here.
Yeah.
And one was ergonomics and engineering psychology.
Human engineering.
Human engineering. So I switched to human engineering. And of course, then because I took the psychology component of it as opposed to the biomechanics component of it.
Fascinating psychology and the left and right brain, so to say.
So then I had to do a bunch of courses, right? Because I didn't have the grounding in it.
Yeah.
So I had to do a bunch of introductory courses to come up the curve.
Yeah.
Information processing and kind of cognition.
So how long did that PhD take?
It should have been done in 3 or 4 years. But what happened in the meantime is that my consulting, which started out as a RA job, there was some grant that came to the university. It was one of these bridging, how to keep companies in New York instead of moving south to where the labor laws are lax. And so it came from the state to the company, only to be used to have the local university come and make your company more efficient, more productive, more profitable. Therefore, you won't leave.
So you're doing those assignments.
So I got assigned to one of those. And
Oh,
then
lovely.
I discovered again, not only I enjoyed it, but I liked it. And I was so good at it. Like I was really able to make a difference. So much so that my clients started calling me back. Like I would go as a government employee or a university employee, $10 an hour plus tuition waiver. And when the contract was over, they'd call me and say, will you come directly? I said, listen, I don't have any employment papers. I'm here as a student. And then there was this, like, everything was fortuitous. The government came in with something called the pilot off-campus work program or something, where they started allowing 20 hours.
A new visa category kind of thing?
No, within the student visa, they said you can now do 20 hours off-campus. Before, they used to allow only 20 hours on campus.
And you could get paid for that?
Yeah, you could get paid for that. So suddenly, I went from, $8 or $10 an hour, whatever it was getting, to the first time I bid directly. I asked a professor.
You had to set up an entity for that?
A professor of mine had an entity. So through that entity, I went. Eventually,
You're an entrepreneur or a consultant while you're a student?
Eventually, I bought that entity from him.
Oh, yeah.
I ran it for many years. I ran many other graduate students who were down on their luck or got affected by the 14 to 24 rupee devaluation.
Yeah, big one then.
All of those I brought under my wing, and
Early
so I helped
90s.
a lot of people. Yeah,
Mid-90s.
1991. And eventually I gave it. I didn't sell it. I gave it to one of my juniors who ran it for 10, 15 years afterwards.
So you parallelly, during your PhD, you're doing this consulting gig
So
also.
once I started doing this consulting, it was so busy. Like I had so much work. And I only saw it professionally. I didn't see it as an entrepreneur. I didn't see it as a scale business. And when somebody came to me and said, I need help, I need a job, or when the workload got so heavy that I said, I can't do this myself, I have to get somebody, only then I scaled. So I think at the peak, we were probably 5 or 6 or 7 people, and we were billing maybe like $500,000.
You're really enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah, I enjoy what I do, but I started doing it so well and I started making so much money. So one day I realized, I kept saying, I don't know. And I said, if I don't do this now, I'll just get so busy, I'll never do it. So I told all my clients, 6 months, just count me out. I'm not coming. Either you take my.
So you took a step back and finished it.
Took the 6 months, finished it up, did the analysis.
From psychology engineering to high quant MIT MBAs. How did that happen and why did it happen?
There was a big gap. So actually what happened when I graduated, I already had my consulting practice. Yeah. And I must say again, I was very fortunate. The government had come out with a new scheme. It was called the National Interest Waiver. It said that you could go from non-immigrant visa to a green card without having to go through a H1 labor certification, etc. If it could be proven that you were in the national economic interest of the US.
Special category.
Yeah, and it was called National Interest Waiver.
Even now there's a category like that.
But this is the first year they introduced it, 1994.
People of eminence or national importance.
It keeps changing all the time.
Yeah.
In those days, there were 2 districts of New York for immigration. The immigration department had one southern district in Manhattan and a northern district based in Buffalo.
Okay.
So I think I was the first guy that applied under that program in the northern district in Buffalo. So after February, I'd say it took me from March till June or July to collate all the papers for the application. Because by then I'd done so much consulting. I was still in Buffalo. I was on my practical training, 1 year practical training, which started in February.
But your consulting was continuing then, partly?
Had expanded.
Multiple things you're doing at the same time.
No, I was doing consulting for defense, for automotive, for rubber, for printing. I was doing consulting across many companies. A lot of these companies, and I used to be invited to speak at Society of Automotive Engineers, Manufacturing Engineers, ORSA, Operations Society of America, Human Factors Society. So I had a bunch of papers. So I got all these papers together from all these executives and societies saying that it's good, we should keep him. And then that was the in-principle approval. And then you had to go for an interview and they had to stamp it on your thing and give you a print. That was 1 day before the government went into shutdown. Bill Clinton was the president then. 1 day before the shutdown.
That's when his first term, I think. No?
Yeah, I got my green card.
Did it change the way you looked at the US experience?
Yeah, I mean, it had only been a good experience till then. I won't say it changed.
I'd
say it continued. Now it gave me the flexibility that I could do whatever I want because now I have a green card. And then around 96, my father became speaker here.
Correct, Tamil Nadu.
And in this house.
Yeah?
He lived in this house, 96 to 2001. Of course, he lived in Madurai. He only came here whenever the assembly was in session. He didn't like Chennai. So 2-3 years I thought about it and then I said, no, either I should come back or I should do something more substantive than run this hobby business of $500,000 a year. all my consulting career, I had been fascinated by the notion that whatever we could see as engineers, consultants, advisors, all that, eventually it would go into this black hole called the finance department. And then they would say yes or no. Things that we would show, cost benefit is 5x. They'd say, sorry, because we don't know what all they're saying. They may be seeing something 7x, 10x, I don't know. But I had this, I had hit this kind of wall where I said, unless I know how that side of the fence works, I'm always going to be limited this side. So I finally decided I'm going to go back to business school and learn how the world of finance works. So that's why I applied for the MBA.
And why MIT?
No, so I applied first. I thought, you know me, curiosity, exposure, understanding. So I thought I should go to Europe. So I applied and got admission in IMD.
NCI then.
My wife now was my girlfriend then.
You were married by then?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
So I thought I don't want to leave her and go number one. Number two, I thought maybe it's now I'm old enough that the US way of life is already set with me. I don't want to go. So in the end, I declined all the European offers. And then I reapplied the next year to US universities.
MIT would have been tough to get into.
No, I think I had
Sloan was always one of the top schools.
yeah, I had really good grades. So I don't remember. I got rejected a few. I don't remember where all. But I got admitted with scholarship.
Oh,
at
MBA with a scholarship.
Yeah, with some partial scholarship.
Oh, lovely.
At NYU.
Okay, Stern.
Yeah, Stern. At UCLA Anderson.
Lovely.
At MIT with no scholarship. And a few others. And then I decided, maybe for tech people like us, the fit of finance is there. But also there are such profound economists over there.
You were fascinated by finance and economics.
So I thought, let me go and learn from people who really think about it deeply. And again, it was one of the best decisions I made in my life because I would say I finished the MBA in 18 months.
Oh, lovely. 2 years, so you would have finished by the spring of...
So I eventually went in 99. And
by 2001 spring you were done.
By December 2020, I was done.
2000?
Yeah. 2000, sorry, not 20, 2000. I think it really opened me up because I had come with a lot of life experience. Then again, the question is what to do after that. Because the original plan was...
Did Lehman Brothers happen then?
Yeah. Then I thought, actually, let me throw my hat in the ring. And though it was past the dot-com crash, nobody quite realized it was going to keep getting worse for 2 years. So the recruiting market was still buoyant, at least till about January 2001. I applied for campus interviews, I think.
But all in the investments market side?
No, everything. Pacific Gas and Electric, Capital One, consulting companies, banks, trading, banking. As I say, I had a grid, like what all careers could you possibly pursue and what all places could you do it. The first 14 campus interviews, I got callbacks at 13. Okay. The first 7 I got 6 offers. So after that, I stopped going because the market turned.
Fantastic.
And a lot of people were without jobs.
Lehman was one of them.
No, Lehman was not one of them. Because I had not applied. Because it's a long story, but I had not applied. And then somebody was my good friend. He told me, you must go to Lehman. I said, listen, they offered me for banking in the summer as an intern, and I declined and ended up going and sitting in Buffalo and playing golf and hanging out with my friends. So I don't think they'll take me again. He said, no, you never know, try. So the recruiting was over. So off the track, I applied.
Off campus, off placement.
Yeah, separate I applied, and I was very fortunate. A series of good outcomes. So it worked out in such a way that I got a really good offer because of this field I wanted to be in, which was credit derivatives, which was then booming. When I went there,
early days of credit derivatives.
Yeah, early days, yeah. And they called me into the room the first day and they said, look, we look at your resume and we see that, you learn quickly and you get bored fast. So,
how did they figure out that?
Because, in the course of my life, I had done so many different things. If you feel like anything, so we're going to ask you to do a bunch of strange things, not like the traditional path. Keep working on it, and if you feel like you're being left behind for whatever reason, come and see us, but otherwise...
7 years there? Huh?
Yeah, 7 years, I probably did 5 or 6 different jobs.
My God. Right? And mostly in the US geography till you came to India, no?
Yeah, only after my father passed away, then I had to come back to India.
That was 2006, was it? Yeah.
2006, unexpectedly within a week of being elected.
Yeah, I remember. Immediately after 2006 elections.
Yeah. Anyway. Again, it was a complicated time because I'm only child. My mother was...
You were married by then?
Yeah, I married. I had one boy and my wife was pregnant with our second son.
In 2006,
2006 when he passed. My older boy was born 2005 January. And so I couldn't leave my wife and children back in the US and come to India. I couldn't leave my mother in India and live in the US. So And to be fair, the party offered me, the then leader Kalaignar offered me a chance to come and run in my father's seat and join the cabinet. I couldn't do it because I couldn't leave my family in the US and be here. And I couldn't keep my job at Lehman because I couldn't leave my mother. So I went to resign at Lehman. And they said, no, don't resign. Why you resign? I said, move back to India. No, you have to move back to India, no problem. You can go and relaunch the Indian franchise. We are looking to reestablish. Because they'd come here once in the 90s and shut down during the Asian financial crisis and moved back. So you can do that.
They want to continue to have you in the organization.
So I said, but I can't go to India. So they said, well, that's fine. You can be in charge of India from New York till your baby is born.
That kind of flexibility, fascinating.
And then after that, you can be in India, in charge of India as an expat from New York. There was a lot of resentment within the company, especially among other Indians who had asked to come as expats. I said, no, if you want to go to India, you go to India. Why should you be an expat? You're Indian, you go back to India. But the end of it was that they kind of vested in people in a way that was still the old kind of partnership model, even though it was a listed company and very corporate. So if they believed in you, then they were willing to do anything it took to support you, right? And so a lot of people said, how come this guy gets the treatment and other people don't? As I say, it matters a lot, who your bosses are, how they support you. But more than that, the point I made, which is that if they were doing it because of my father, because of my grandfather, because of some inside connection, then I agree that it is nepotism and not... but they don't know me from Adam. I'm an immigrant, right? I mean, I have a green card. But
what was here was not relevant to them. Yeah.
So basically, they were doing it because they were vesting in me, because I had added value to the firm.
Absolutely.
And they didn't want to lose me. And I was loyal to the end, meaning till it was bankrupt, I didn't go. And after it was bankrupt and I stayed here as the director to sell the documents to transfer the companies. I didn't join the buyer because I said the only reason I was still in banking was because it was Lehman. Otherwise, I would have quit and gone back to my mother, my family, my legacy in 2006. So in 2008...
So 2008, when the crash happened, you were still in the US managing India?
I was in India as a US expat managing 2 companies in India, which was owned by Lehman through
that
Mauritius
experience
and
was something really fascinating, no? The 2008 winding down.
I would say that 1 month between, probably the 6 months leading up to, but that period of 1 month after the bankruptcy was like
September of 2008.
Yeah, September 15th of the filing till October 12th or 13th when I signed the last exit paper, protecting all the people who worked.
That's what you said, yeah.
Protecting everybody who worked. I was the only guy who resigned and walked. And they paid me to walk, so I also got a good outcome. There was no problem. But when I walked, I didn't know they were going to pay me to walk. Then they paid me to walk because they had some contractual other commitment. You have to think about life in ways you never contemplated before. There are all of us on an email that says Lehman.com. But some guys are Barclays employees. Some guys are Nomura employees. Some guys are in a bankrupt company with no job. Some guys are waiting to be put into a bankruptcy administrator. And you're all on the same email. You used to have a boss. Your boss is no longer your boss because he works for a different company.
Correct.
Right? So you have all these kind
Very
of
complex.
complexities. I learned many, many things. The only lasting memory or the single lasting memory of that is I could not sleep.
Yeah.
I could not sleep not because I was stressed. I was well off.
Was the child born by then?
Yeah. He was born. We were here. He was healthy. We lived in a big place. We had everything. My wife was sleeping well. My children were sleeping well. I didn't,
But you couldn't sleep well.
I couldn't sleep not because of fear. I couldn't sleep because the number of permutations and combinations of what could possibly happen the next day was so high that my brain wouldn't switch off. So I stopped sleeping.
You're playing out multiple scenarios in your mind.
What am I going to do tomorrow? Not over the next 30 days or 20. What about tomorrow? Should I get on a plane and go to Nomura? Or should I get on a plane and go to New York? Or should I just sit here? Or should I try to find my own buyer? What about this company? What about that? So effectively, I stopped sleeping in the bedroom and I started sleeping in the living room on a couch because I would just keep calculating, assessing,
playing out the various scenarios and implications and subsequent actions.
And in the end, it took a month and it resolved relatively well. I must say that when it resolved in a way that was again a learning lesson for me. And I marked the learning lesson in the sense that, but the net result is all of a sudden one day when I declined to sign to stay, the local business had already been bought by Nomura. Now they were buying the remaining part of the business, the offshore markets that I was running. So they called me in and they laid out 3 papers in front of me. This is you resigning from Lehman Brothers, New York, where I was employed. This is you joining Nomura India, which is buying these companies. And this is you resigning from Nomura India under the agreement that we pay you A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, 50 things. And under this resignation, it's called a separation agreement because it's not a firing, it's not a quitting, it's a separation. We are separating.
Mutually.
And the separation agreement is for 9 months or something. You can't non-compete, non-solicit. You cannot join another investment banking or banking company, and you cannot take any of your employees to work into, or you cannot induce them to work for any other entity by calling them and getting them bid up by somebody. But I must say that when they gave me these 3 documents, this is probably the last thing I said, give me a second, I'm stepping out the room. And they said, no, don't worry, you know, this. They were worried if I didn't sign it, a lot of other deals were going to fall apart. They had to buy, it's a long story. So I said, no, just give me a second, don't worry, I'm going to sign the paper. I went out, I called my wife. And said, listen, they've just made me an offer that is better. I had assumed that I would resign. They wouldn't make me an offer. And I had like negotiations going on 2-3 other big banks because they'd call me the first day after bankruptcy. I thought I'd go to work for one of them. They have made me such an offer that had I known that this was a possible outcome when we started 30 days ago, I would have played for this outcome. I didn't even realize that this was a possible outcome. You know, of all the scenarios I contemplated, I never contemplated sell the companies, guarantee the employees, fix everything, and then they pay me a bunch of money to walk away. Today tells me you do the right thing and you'll get the right outcomes. And I went back and signed all the papers and walked. Right?
Your wife confirmed your decision.
Yeah, I wasn't, it was not to consult with her. It was to tell her, mark this day in our collective memory. Right? I had already decided I was going to sign the papers. I just wanted to go out and tell her that such a deal is
one of those defining moments.
I got paid to do nothing. I was still getting paid, right, for months and months.
You had a 3 months non-compete, basically.
No, I was 6 or 9 was a long non-compete. And plus they gave me the bonus, plus they gave me the house, plus they gave me the expat, plus they gave me the school, plus they gave me the cup. They paid me really
do the right thing and the outcome will be right.
Paid me handsomely to walk away.
After Lehman was Standard Chartered in Singapore.
No, that didn't come easy. After that, I moved back. I put my family here, and actually in 2006, when Kalanga offered me, but when he offered me and I declined, I told him I can't come here because of my family, but I'll come in 2011. So I expected that I would run in 2011 for MLA. My father would have wanted it, my grandfather would have wanted it, I kept. So when I moved back here after the bankruptcy, my original vision was that by 2011, I would have hit the voluntary retirement age in Lehman under the new pension plan. If I had left at 45, I would have had enough years to vest in the pension plan, plus the stock, plus voluntary. It's a bit of a complicated thing. But I would have been the only guy to qualify for this formula where years of service plus age must add up to 55. Because most people come at 20-something.
Correct.
Or 30-something. And then, so I came at 35 and I would have been 45 plus 10 years of service. So I would have just qualified to walk. So my ambition when I came back was that I'll stay with Lehman till 2011, run for MLA in 2011. But of course, Lehman went bankrupt, so that was out. So from that perspective, I thought there's no way I can do business, so I'll wait. Because the crisis got so bad, all the money that they were pumping out in the OECD countries, QE1, QE2, TARP, this thing, that thing, coming up with names, all these things which incidentally, the MIT economists had told me, we will never be Japan, we will never bring all these liquidity programs to prevent failure. Here, the great thing about our capitalism is destructive creation, Schumpeter, right? But because that all the money started flowing to the emerging markets, there were no opportunities there. So 4 trillion of excess liquidity is printed between 2008 and 2013. In retrospect, we found 3 trillion of that came to the emerging markets, came to Asia, Africa, Middle East, Australia, the commodity boom. So there were no bankers here for that kind of volume. Trillions of dollars, I'm not talking about like that.
Yeah.
So here there was a big boom in the need for bankers. Yeah, Asia, Dubai, Hong
Middle
Kong,
East, whatever.
All over.
EMEA company.
Africa, because Africa was covered out of
EMEA
Dubai.
and Asia, APAC, yeah.
So then people started calling me, saying, listen, what are you doing? So I said, no, I'm quasi-retired, I'm waiting for elections. Said, no. At least you do something, right? If you're going to run in 2011 is still far away. So in 2009, my non-compete, non-solicit expired. And so I started having discussions, and by 2010 March or something, I had signed up with Standard Chartered to join in the summer. Because a lot of ex-Lehman guys, including a former ex-Lehman colleague of mine, who both of us report the same boss.
Singapore.
New York. No, I'm saying both of us had been colleagues in New York.
This was Standard Chartered Singapore.
Yeah. No, Standard Chartered Global was based out of Singapore because when the crisis happened, Standard Chartered realized that they were going to get much more value and traction as the EM bank than as a London bank. So they moved the entire operation. Anyway, Temasek is their biggest shareholder.
Correct.
So they made the strategic decision to shift all the business heads and all the kind of head of banking, head of markets, head of trading, head of sales, all that to Singapore. So those were all mainly a lot of former American bankers. First year I said, no, I have to wait and see what happens in the election. So they gave me a job out here in Chennai at the old Grindlays building.
Yeah, Hyderabad.
No, in Paris Corner.
Paris Corner, old
Grindlays building. Next to their house and that police station.
Yeah, opposite Brahma Bazaar.
On that floor I was the only guy because Ashok Leyland had been there, but they had built their own tower and moved out. So 2-3 floors were empty. So on the top floor, me and my PA were the only occupants. And I was doing business development and strategy for this capital market business because all this capital is coming. So bond raising, stock raising, and all is happening big. I was traveling around the world, but based out of Chennai. And then 2011 election came, and for a long story, for other reasons, I offered that I would run, but the party said they didn't need me. Now that you're not going to be a candidate, move to Singapore now. Because what had happened after the crisis, the OECD regulators had said, people are arbitraging us. So every bank had to pick a lead regulator.
Okay.
And so all major roles had to be under one of the OECD regulators, and you had to pick one as your lead market regulator. So Stanchart picked the MAS as its lead market regulator. So I moved to Singapore as global head of money markets, foreign exchange from transaction banking, which is custody, trade, and transfers, and e-commerce, right? Which was the exact opposite of everything I'd ever done at Lehman.
From such a number-driven, quarter-to-quarter number-driven, structured corporate environment to public life, was a conscious choice, or what you had always had in your mind? You were not tempted to continue what you're doing?
No, I knew I had to come and do this sometime, right? As I say, I'm an only child. My father wanted it for me. My grandfather wanted it for me. From when I was young, I had it in my head that I had to serve for the greater good at some point in my life. I just kept pushing it off. I had an opportunity in '96.
And because you tasted so much success in what you're doing.
No, but I mean, I'm saying like if coming back was have to do checkbox in my life. So by 2016, effectively, I thought it's now or never for 2-3 reasons.
You were around 50 then?
Yeah, 2016, I was 50, number one. It was 10 years since my father had passed. That sense, I thought, if not now, probably never. My wife and children I kept back in India. They were American expats in India while I was an Indian expat in Singapore for those years of service.
On a personal note, your family made the transition seamlessly, your wife and your family. No, they didn't have, they got used to India and Madurai and all without much.
I won't say without much, but my children found it relatively easy because they came when they were very young. I think my wife, I've been very lucky. I had an expat contract in Singapore which was naturally coming to an end in 2014.
That inflection point was there.
And so they said, do you want it extended? I said, no. By then, the guy who had taken me over, he had also left to do other things.
They didn't try retaining you?
No, they were very frank. They said, do you want to extend the contract? What would you like to do? And I said, I would like to go back. I would like to.
Very clear.
Yeah,
you had made up your mind by then.
So they gave me a voluntary retirement or something. There was some term under which you would get to keep your unvested stock and cash. Because otherwise, you know how it works in banking, right?
Correct.
Some part of your bonus paid now, some year plus, T+1, T+2.
Correct.
So all the things would, no, it's usually spread over 3 years. But every year you're accruing some more. You're cashing out old and you're accruing.
30%,
so there's like 3 years worth of future payouts.
30, 40 kind of stuff,
If you take that voluntary separate, it's called early retirement or something to that effect. I forget what it is. I was old enough to apply for it and senior enough. Then you got to keep your unvested stock and cash. It would vest over time as normal. So I kept that. And then I walked.
So all your number skills, all your international financial exposure helped you take the job you took as your finance minister a lot. Did it in many ways?
Yeah, having a good memory helps in a lot of things. I think my father had almost a kind of eidetic or probably photographic memory. It helps a lot being a lawyer.
But understanding numbers is different from memory.
No. So I'll build on it. I say memory is first most important thing. Good memory skills are most important. Second, partly when I went to Wall Street, for example, I joked with my boss, 2 things. I said, everything I need to do, the most complicated derivative, synthetic CDO squared over here, I probably learned in high school because all you're doing is on a spreadsheet.
Correct.
Math probably came relatively good to me. But the other thing I would say is, The math I did in operations research was probably as complicated or more complicated than the math in finance. This is roughly the same math applied. In fact, many of the same models were applied.
Yeah.
So this was the second time in my life I was doing it, and I had learned all that in my formative years when I was 21, 22, 23 years old. So I think it stuck with me. So the comfort with numbers probably was part genetic or part intuitive, whatever, or inherent. Part by these grooming over many years in many degrees. The memory is important, the numbers are important. What is much more important than that is two things. The first is 5 years in opposition MLA, I read so many thousands of CAG audit paras and attended so many meetings and saw how the government was failing, what all was not working right, what was supposed to be, what was actually happening. And the information I carried with me from those 5 years was probably much more valuable than most people realize in doing the job that I landed. And the last thing I would say is a lot of this is about organizational design, alignment of incentives, human psychology. That in every large organization, it doesn't matter.
Even in politics?
I don't know politics, administration.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Even in governance and administration, these things matter a lot.
That's a very corporate approach to administration.
No, but my point is, what does corporate approach mean? Corporate means it is a listed company or a large company or some scale organization. You can't say corporate. You say commercial versus public.
Okay. The wrong word is that. Yeah.
But I'm saying this notion, every time they try to tarnish something, if you try to do it in public affairs or in administration, then no, that won't work in politics. It's corporate. There's no such damn thing as corporate. Philosophy.
Outcome oriented would be.
It is profit-making companies' philosophy, non-profit entities' philosophy, public service entities' philosophy. It's how the organization is structured, what should be its values, what should be its alignment of incentives, what should be its human resource policy. These are the things. And those things I'm saying,
alignment of objectives.
If corporates happen to do, if listed corporates that are accountable to their shareholders in the market happen to do it particularly well, that doesn't mean that they own it.
Correct.
They do it because it's a competitive marketplace. I'll put it a different way. If you have a competitive marketplace, you either perform or you will get beaten by somebody who performs better than you.
Exactly.
Right? In a true capitalist model, it is a competitive market and competence and execution ability is the determining factor of success. The problem for governments is that all governments by nature are monopolies. You can only have one government.
Correct.
Politics is competitive. Government is a monopoly.
Exactly.
So the urgency for government to perform that well has to be a two-step process. You have to say, only if I run a good government, I can get re-elected. Therefore, governance becomes important to politics. So once you break the tie between re-election and performance of government or governance or administration, now you have a very dangerous situation because everybody is going to be extremely competitive at politics. But there's no urgency to be any good at governance or administration. So, inherently you're a monopoly. There is no second order consequence in your political outcome based on the capability of being a good government or good governance. Then you start to see decay. And this I'm not saying about one state or one country. I'm saying generally democracy all around the world, we have this problem. So, in that sense, I would say the real value that individuals can bring if they are going to sit in the seat is good memory, good history, understanding of what has happened and not. But most important, that you should understand how organizations can be tuned to perform. That, I think, is the distinction between average and better than average outcome.
Fantastic. I think you succeeded to a great extent to doing that and what you're doing right now also, Thiaga. I think we are all very proud of you to having applied it to administration and large governance. Great. That's really, I think, something really fascinating. Last couple of questions. If you were to define your REC experience in a couple of lines, what you learned, the quintessence of REC for all of us, NIT for all of us. This is to understand your grasp of that and to make you what you are and what others could get from it.
My first experience at an institution where overwhelmingly only talent had driven the selection. So everybody who was there,
merit-based,
was there because they were very good at what they did. Being in an environment where you're learning from everybody all the time, learning about their life, learning about their culture, helping understand the subject in every way. It was such a, transformative experience of life.
Last thing on the alumni community. Recall your experience worldwide or alumni, and how do you think the REC alumni can do better and do more with the college? What's your thought on that? And how could be mutually complementary between the institution and the alumni community? And what do you think of what we are doing now and your views?
If I compare the REC alumni network to, let's say, some of the other institutions, because I had the luxury of studying,
Interacting
yeah,
with them.
it's not the weakest or the most lethargic. It's certainly not the best, right? Even when I, as a minister, go around,
Yeah.
I would say that we could do a lot better. I would
Sure.
say that relative to the IIT alumni network or the IIM alumni network, I certainly think the NIT Trichy or REC Trichy alumni network is not as active and is not leveraging technology or connectivity like we should, right? I mean,
Agree
we
with
all
you.
graduated at a time where there wasn't social media, where there wasn't that easy access. Like I'm an alumnus of MIT.
That's right.
If I go into the MIT alumni database, which gives me my own login, I can go search by name, by program, by degree, by whatever, and I can connect to any MIT alum. Most of us have kept our numbers and this thing's updated, but because they provide a email for life address that
Agree
says
with you. As alumni at alumni.mit.edu.
yeah, then you can reach anybody in the network at any time. And most of us try to keep our positions updated and stuff like that. So, there's a database that's really immediate. I think we should do more of those things.
We are taking baby steps. We have a portal. Gathering data is a challenge, but we are taking baby steps. I
My
understand.
point is that it's a two-way street, right? It's not just about you. It's also about the people, right?
The alumni also wanting to engage, and see the mutual benefit of the network.
Yeah, the true definition of network externalities. The more people get into it, the more the network is useful. The more people get into it, the more the network is useful, right?
I think the Global Alumni Meet is one of the exercises we do regularly, periodically, to catalyze the alumni engagement. And with people like you speaking there, Mr. Chandrasekhar Nagri will speak there, and other big speakers coming, we think we're going to get some 1,300 alumni there. Wow. We're doing it at a large scale, like last time, this time also. We're hoping it'll energize the network and make people come together again. Thanks so much for doing this for us.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you very
precious.
much for having me.
Thank you.